Okay, we'll try one more time. So we're starting with the Mishnah on 72a. Five groups that spent the Shabbos in one mansion. It says in number 10, they were divided into 5 areas of a large room. Each had a separate door leading to a common chotzer, common courtyard, which also served residents of other buildings that opened into it. Beis Shammai Emrim Eruv lechol chavur v'chavur. An Eruv is needed for each group. U'Beis Emrim Eruv echad lechulam. One Eruv suffices for all of them. U'moedim b'zman shemiktzos shuim b'chadorim u'ba'aliyos. However, Beis Hillel agree that when some of them are quartered in rooms or upper stories, shehem tzrichim eruv lechol chavur v'chavur. They need an eruv for each group.
That makes sense. It's like an apartment house.
It says in number 9. This helps us to understand this example of the Mishnah. It says this Mishnah is only applicable when they were living there temporarily. Shovsu. But if this was their regular place of residence, they would be viewed as distinct residences even if the partitions did not reach the ceiling. Conversely, had they been short-term guests at the mansion, they would not restrict at all. The Mishnah applies when the mansion is being used as a dwelling for at least a 30-day period. You know those places that sometimes you can rent a big house, or like a big family that wants to get to have a get together.
Right.
They would rent this big house, and maybe 10 or 11 rooms.
Yeah.
So they're all living in one mansion.
Yeah.
But they all have this speaking about a case that all of them have separate entrance to the courtyard.
Yeah.
Well, how do I know it? In number 10, you write, each had a separate door leading to a common chotzer. So obviously Beis Hillel is more lenient and says that one eruv is sufficient for all of them to now carry in the courtyard. Beis Shammai says no, each one needs his own eruv. And also notice another diuk. It says chamishu chavus. It's not 5 people. It says 5 groups.
Right.
Are and spend Shabbos. So each group, according to Beis Shammai, would require an eruv chatzeros, to make an eruv so you can carry in the courtyard on Shabbos. And according to Beis Hillel, one eruv will be sufficient. So let's see the Gemara. Amar Rav Nachman. The Gemara discusses the nature of the partitions separating the different groups. What makes it separate? What separates the groups? What types of partitions? We mentioned before that it doesn't reach the ceiling. Let's see. So Amar Rav Nachman machloikes b'mesipos. Bimsipos. What is mesipos? This dispute is when the groups are separated with a makeshift divider. What is this makeshift divider? So in number 14, it tells us that it's a low partition made of pieces of wood. A mesipos is a wall which is less than 10 tefachim high, about 50 inches. Only then does Beis Hillel view the groups as living in a single dwelling. Ava b'mechitza so. So meaning if they live in single dwelling, they don't need, each one doesn't have to make an eruv. One eruv is sufficient. Understand?
Yeah, if we had all apartments, in an apartment.
No. Think of a big square,
Okay.
5,000 square feet
Okay.
of just an empty space.
All right.
Okay, there's walls,
Right.
but in this 5,000 square feet, there's a divider. Each group gets 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the divider is only 50 inches,
Yeah.
Beis Hillel would consider the 5 groups as living in a single residence. And if they all live in a single residence, even though each one has its own door to the courtyard, it still be sufficient to have one eruv. Okay, that's what it means. Machloikis b'mesipos. Ava b'mechitza so. But when the groups, so obviously Beis Shammai would disagree, and he would say that even though it's only 10 tefachim high, it's still considered that they're living in separate residences, and each one would require to have an eruv. Comes now avad mechitza so, but if it's a divider that has 10 tefachim, what is 10 tefachim high partition? We said that the mesipos has less than 10 tefachim. In 14 it says the mesipos has less than 10 tefachim. And mechitza is 10 tefachim high and higher. Everyone agrees. Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel would say that an eruv is needed for each group. 72.82. Ikadam, where there's a second version of Nachman's statement. Rav Nachman says that machlokes is regarding a wall partition that is less than 10. So another version, after Mesipos machlokes, it says even when a makeshift divider separates the groups, there is a dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. It's 15. It says according to this version of Nachman means to say that Beis Shammai view the area as a distinct dwellings, even when they are separated with makeshift dividers. The dispute, Rashi in parentheses, but the dispute also involves partitions 10 tefachim high. Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree in 2 cases. Number 1, when there are makeshift dividers, and number 2, when there are partitions that are 10 tefachim high. Pligi Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbi. Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbi, the son of Rabbi, disagreed about the proper explanation of this dispute in the Mishnah. Chad Omar Machlokes Mechitza Megillas Atikah. One of them said the dispute is when the groups are separated with partitions that reach the ceilings.
Then it becomes a room.
Aval mechitzas she'ein megillas atikah. You're right. But now partitions that do not reach the ceiling, div yakol eruv echad Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would say that Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel would say that the eruv suffices for all of them. So that's another version of the machlekes.
Yeah.
Meaning, if the mechitzas are reaching the ceilings, the dispute is why the groups are separated with partitions that reach the ceilings. Look at 16. Even though the end of the Mishnah stated that everyone agrees that when the groups are separated in rooms, they each need an eruv, the first part of the Mishnah is discussing temporary partition, such as curtains that reach the ceilings. That's what Tosfos says. Temporary partitions that reach the ceilings. Who indicates that the end of the Mishnah could be discussing rooms that were in existence since the house was built.
So it's two different cases.
Yeah.
But okay, but I got a question. If each group needs their own Eruv, okay, let's say we're going to this mansion and we're going to have a nice Shabbaton, and we're going
Right.
to get together and have a nice Suda with all these groups. The idea was to, and have speeches, the whole. So if they each have their own Eruv, then they're not going to get together, no? I mean, they can't carry to get to the.
If they don't have,
No, if they have one big Eruv, then it's obviously not a problem.
no, but if it's required of them to have a separate Eruv, once
Yeah.
they have it, they can still carry. Whole idea of each one of them having an Eruv is they should all be able to carry, even if it's considered that they're living in a separate residence.
Okay, let's take here to Chabad Central.
Okay.
The turnpike is the divider between the West Boca Eruv and the Central, as I understand it. So if I can't carry across the turnpike.
Oh, but I don't know if the 2,000 Amis are ending there, but even. I don't
Then
know.
we have the Tuchum to deal with. Okay, that's also another problem.
But it's in that case you're still in Boca. I don't know if it's even a problem. You don't even start counting 2,000 square feet. You only start counting 2,000 from
Where there's no houses.
not from you, from where the town ends. So where exactly the town ends?
Well,
If you live in West Palm Beach County, town ends maybe in Lantana. Who knows?
The West Palm Beach County ends by Jupiter.
So, anyhow, the case over here, the case over here is they are living in one house.
Right. But I'm just saying the separate Eruvs, I thought it was a problem. But okay.
No, the opposite. Separate Eruvs enables them to all carry. It's all borne out whether they're living in separate residences. Therefore, they would need separate Eruv. And if they're not considered to be living in a separate residence, like the position of Hillel, then one Eruv would be sufficient to all. But the outcome is the same.
Okay.
Whether you do one Eruv, if you follow Beis Hillel, you do one Eruv, and everybody can carry into the courtyard. If you follow Beis Shammai, and each one makes his Eruv, they're still able to. That's the whole idea of the Eruv, so that they should be able to carry to the courtyard.
Okay, all right.
The question is, what exactly in what scenario exactly Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree?
Okay.
So comes Rav Nachman and says they disagree about Mesipas, which is a wall under 10 tefachim.
Okay.
If it's a wall over 10 tefachim, he says even Beis Hillel would agree to Beis Shammai. Even Beis Hillel would go along with the Beis Shammai. Comes a Gemara and gives us another version. Maybe he says the machlokes is in Mesipas. Even when it makes dividers separate the group, there's a dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So it says we have Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree in two cases: when there are makeshift dividers which are less than 10, and number two, when there are partitions that are 10 tefachim high. So Pligi bar Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Chia and Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi, disagreed about the proper explanation of this dispute in the Mishnah. One of them said the dispute is when the groups are separated with partitions that reach the ceiling. But when they are separated by partitions that do not reach the ceiling, when is Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel disagree? When the partitions reaching the ceiling, Beis Shammai would say it's obviously separate residences, and Beis Hillel would say no, it's still one residence. So he says, so where they all agree about what part they all agree? So according to this version, they will agree if the partitions are not reaching the ceilings that it's all one residence, and therefore you need one Eruv. Chad Omar, and then another view says, Machleket b'mechitza she'ein magias l'tika. The dispute is when the group separated with partitions that do not reach the ceiling. When is Beis Shammai disagree with Beis Hillel in a case of where the partitions are not reaching the ceiling? But if the partitions are reaching the ceiling, everyone agrees that they need to have a separate Eruv. So there's different ways of looking at it. Let's see the summary in the bottom. We have Rav Nachman version 1 and Rav Nachman version 2, and then we have first Amir and second Amir. So partitions reaching the ceiling, all agree individual Eruv. That's according to Rav Nachman first version, Rav Nachman second version. All agree individual Eruv contributions are required. First Amir says, again, we're dealing with partition reaching the ceiling, dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And second Amir says, all agree individual Eruv contributions are required. Number 2, partitions 10 Tvachim high, all agree individual Eruv contributions are required. That's our Nachman first version. Second version, dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai would say required, Beis Hillel say it's not. First Amir would say all agree individual Eruv contributions are required, and dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Second Amir.
The whole thing is about the svara, the logic of it.
Yeah. Make sure dividers, dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And first Amir says all agree individual Eruv contributions are required. Meisive. Amar Rav Yehuda, so we're going to page 72b1. Amar Rav Yehuda, Hesber lo nechleku. Amar Rav Yehuda Hasabo, that's the name of Rabbi Yehuda. Why you call him Hasabo? It says this was called Rav Yehuda Hasabo, the thinker. Hasabo is the thinker, because of his sharp mind. So, let's see. Amar Rav Yehuda Hasabo, Rabbi Yehuda, the sharp one, said, Lo nechleku b'sham v'sem v'chizam v'chizam. Sham Beis Hillel did not disagree about walls that reach the ceiling. Shetzich an Eruv lechol chavura v'chavura, that they need an Eruv for each group. All agree that they need Eruv because it's one residence. Where is their dispute? They disagree about partitions that do not reach the ceiling. Beis Shammai emrim with Eruv. An Eruv is needed for every group. Beis Hillel emrim Eruv echad lechulon. Okay. Beis Hillel say you need one Eruv for all. That's a case of mechitzas she'ein magir satikra, walls, partitions that do not reach the ceiling. According to the one who said the dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is when there are partitions that reach the ceiling. Tiyuvta, this Baisa is a refutation. Why is this Baisa a refutation? This Baisa states clearly that if the walls reach the ceiling, even Beis Hillel would agree that each group must contribute its own Eruv. This refutes the Amira, who said that Beis Hillel holds, even in such a case, only one joint Eruv contribution is necessary. So let's see. According to the one who said the dispute is when the groups are separated with partitions that do not reach the ceiling. Siyato. The Bible says they support. According to that version, that Rav Nachman said the dispute is when the groups are separated with a makeshift divider. Tiyuvta, this Bible says refutation. According to that second version of Rav Nachman, said the dispute, that Rav Nachman said the dispute is even when the groups are separated with a makeshift divider with this mesipos, as well as when separated by a structure wall. Leimate v'tiyuvta, shall we say that this Braisa is a refutation? The Braisa presented the dispute when partition separated the groups. should we infer from this that if there were only makeshift dividers separating them, that everyone would agree that one Eruv suffices for all the groups? Amar lo Rav Nachman pligi b'mechitz v'adim sipos. They disagree when the groups are separated with partitions, and similarly when they are separated with a makeshift divider. And that which the Brisa stated, that they disagree when the groups are separated with partition, was to let you know the extent of Isilal leniency, that even when an actual partition separated the groups, only one Eruv is needed. But let the Brisa state that they disagree when the groups are separated with a makeshift divider, to let you know the extent of Beis Shammai stringency. The Gemara says, yeah, but koyach de'etero adif. Koyach de'etero adif. It is preferable to teach the extent of leniency. Therefore, although Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel actually disagree in both cases, the Brisa presents a dispute in the case of partition to state if Beis Hillel hold a single Eruv suffices. Amar Rav Nachman. Amar Rav Nachman Amarav Halacha ki Rabbi Yehuda HaSabor. Halacha follows the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda HaSabor. This statement of Rav Nachman must be in accordance with the second version of his explanation of the Mishnah before. Rabbi Yehuda HaSabor ruling refuted the first version of Rav Nachman. Okay. Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Masnisi Nami Daiko. Our Mishnah also strongly implies the Ketoni Umoidim Bizman Shmikzason Shum Vechadorim Valios taught, and Beis Hillel agree that when some of them are quartered in rooms or upper stories, shetzrichin eruv lechol chavuro vechavuro, they need an eruv for each group. My chadori, my aliyos, what type of rooms and what type of upper stories are meant? If you will say that rooms refers to actual rooms with solid walls separating them, and then upper stories refers to actual upper stories which are totally separated from the other apartments. Pshita, it is obvious that the groups living in these areas must each contribute to an Eruv. Elalav, rather, it is not the proper explanation. Ke'ein chadorim, areas divided by partitions similar to walls. Ke'ein aliyos, areas divided by upper stories. Ke'ein is like, similar to upper stories. Umayniu. And what type are these? We're dealing with divided areas divided by partitions that reach the ceiling. Shemamina, learn from this that the Beis Hillel agree that in such a case each needs an Eruv, because it's considered one residence, as Rabbi Yehuda HaSabor said. Rabbi Yehuda, the sharp one. Now, until now, the Gemara has understood that the dispute between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel in our Mishnah concerns the type of divider necessary to view the different areas of the mansion as distinct residences. The Gemara now cites a Baita which understands the dispute differently. In what case were the words of our Mishnah said, when the people living in the mansion take their Eruv to another place, to a house, another house, or a different chotzer, aval im. But if the Eruv comes to them, everyone would say that one Eruv suffices for all of them. So according to the Baisa, this Baisa, the Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel are not discussing the type of divider that separates the groups. Both view the groups as a single entity. The disagreement is in the Eruv requirements of any incorporated group of people. Based on the previous Baisa, the Gemara inquires about the authorship of another Baisa. Keman Azlo Ho. Whom does this next Baita follow? The Tanya. It was taught in a Baisa. Chamisha Shegovu Eruvin. 5 residents of a Chotzer who collected the Eruv to permit carrying into the Chotzer. When they take their Eruv to another place, another Chotzer to join with it, one Eruv suffices for all of them. Keman, Kevisil. So this is an interesting case. 5 residents who collected their Eruv to permit carrying into their Chotzer. When they take the Eruv to another place, another Chotzer to join with it, 1 Eruv suffices for all of them. Keman, Kevisil. The opinion of Beis Hillel. B'cham require a new contribution for each resident in order to merge the chotzer with the adjoining one. The Baisa does not require it. Another version of Baisa, which elaborates on our Mishnah. In what case were the words of our Mishnah say, when the Eruv incorporating the Chotzer comes to them and is placed in one of the areas in the mention. But if they take the Eruv to another place in the Chotzer, everyone would say that they need an Eruv for each group. Based on this version of the Baisa, the previous Baisa, the Gemara inquires about the authorship of the other Baisa. Kemanos loho. What does this next Baita follow? The Tanya. Chamish go with Siruvo, and 5 residents of a Chotzer collected the Eruv to permit carrying into the Chotzer, to their Chotzer. When they take the Eruv to another place, another Chotzer to join with it, Eruv 1 Eruv suffices for all of them. Keman, whom the Leik Echad, it is not like either one. It follows neither Beis Shammai nor Beis Hillel. According to this version of the Baisa, both Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel require no Eruv contribution for each resident in order to merge the Chotzer, the adjoining one. This Baisa does not require it. Okay. New Mishnah. The Mishnah continues its discussion of the specification needed to view a dwelling as a distinct residence requiring its own contribution. Brothers who eat at their father's table, but sleep in their own homes. You see, they sleep in their own homes, but they eat at their father's table. Need an Eruv for each one if they want to join in an Eruv with the other members of the Chotzer. If one of them forgot and did not join in the Eruv, he must relinquish his rights. When they bring Eruv to another place in the Chotzer. But if the Eruv comes to them, or if there are no other residents with them in the Chotzer, they need not join in an Eruv. It's very important to exactly understand this case. We said brothers that are eating by their father's table.
And sleep in their own homes.
Right, but in 18 it tells us exactly the case. It says their houses are in the same chotzer. at their fathers, as their fathers. Other people also have houses there. So it's just like a regular case, but it's like a regular case of a chotzer that houses are turning into the same chotzer. They all have entrance to the same chotzer. But in this case, it's brothers. They're eating by their father's house and they go back to their homes.
Yeah.
So our Mishnah said that they need an Eruv. If one forgot, Mevatel Seshusa, he needs to relinquish his rights. And Mosai, what are we dealing with? And Mosai, when is this so that they need to relinquish his rights? When they bring the Eruv to another place in the Chotzer. But if the Eruv comes to them, or if there are no other residents with them in the Chotzer, they need not join an Eruv. Turning to page 72b. The place of sleep determines a person's residence. The Mishnah taught it's ruling where the brothers receive support from their father, but do not actually eat in the house. The Gemara cites a brayso to introduce the dispute of the determining factor of a person's residence. Tanu Rabban Yishlo Beis Shar Achsadro Merpeses, someone who has a residence in a gatehouse, portico, or gatehouse. You know what's portico?
Yeah,
It's like a porch, a balcony.
the most famous one is the White House.
White House has a portico
The president,
with the poles.
yeah, the president took off his mask over there when he got better.
So, someone who has a residence in a gatehouse, portico, or gatehouse, bezman bechatzar chaveiroi, which is in the chotzer of his friend, arei ze eino iser olov, he does not restrict them, as beis hateven, beis haboko, beis haitzim, beis haitzoros. If he has a room for storing straw, an animal barn, wood shed, or storage houses, arei ze iser olov, he restricts the chotzer. Rabbi Yehuda says only a place of residence restricts. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Maser ben Napcho. Rabbi Yehuda said in support of his opinion, there was an incident with Ben Napcho, who had houses in 5 chatzeres in the city of Usha. So the matter came before the sages, and they said, only a house of residence restricts the chotzer. Based Diros HaKadah, do you think that any house of residence restricts the chotzer? Mokim diro, a place fit for residence. So the Gemara now seeks the definition of this place of residence that restricts a chotzer. My mokim diro, what is considered a place of residence? Rav Omar. Rav said, mokim pisa, the place of bread. Shmuel Omar mokim leino, place of bread, I guess the place where the person eats his meals. Shmuel said, a place of sleep. What is considered mokim diro, place of residence? According to Rav, it's where you eat bread. According to Shmuel, is where you sleep. Buchim to you. Continue tomorrow.
You look like you're in a hurry, so.